Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Larry's Trackside Teaser, where I look ahead and preview the upcoming NASCAR weekend. And this weekend, we have Phoenix Raceway, where I'll actually be in attendance for the Cup Series, O'Reilly Series, and also the IndyCar Series, as it is the Desert Double. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And before we preview Phoenix Raceway weekend, we have to go through my weekly power rankings. All right, any of you that watched or listened last week, we didn't have O'Reilly Series or Craftsman Truck Series power rankings yet. I wanted to wait until after 3 races. We have 3 races in both of those series now, so we have power rankings, the first edition of those power rankings for the Craftsman Truck Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Let's look at the Craftsman Truck Series first. Chandler Smith has had an insane start to the year, a 3.7 average finish, a fantastic start of the year for Chandler, was even competing late for a potential victory with his teammate Lane Riggs. Second in the power rankings is Ben Rhodes, and Ben Rhodes has really impressed me to start this season, was really competitive this past weekend in St. Pete. I felt like he was the best truck for maybe 60% of the race, and then Lane Riggs kind of took over. And then in third is Ty Majeski. Majeski might have ended up winning at St. Pete if he didn't make that fatal error in the last turn with around 20 laps to go. Probably would have won the race and would probably be second in my power rankings if he was able to pull that off. And then Gio Ruggiero, he's been just staying consistent for the most part. He had a little bit of issues at St. Pete, didn't have his best performance there, but he did have good speed. And then you have Lane Riggs, who had 2 very unfortunate races to start off the year, but then looked extremely strong in St. Petersburg, and he'll take the last spot on my Truck Series power rankings. And then we look at the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series power rankings. And then Austin Hill and Jesse Love, the 2 RCR boys, are leading the pack here. Austin Hill with the win at a 5.0 average finish, and then Jesse Love with the 6.0 average finish. Both these drivers have ran up front in all 3 races this year, and I think each of them have their own argument to win all 3 races, except for maybe Coda. I think they both had an argument to make second, because I don't know if anybody was going to beat Shane Van Gisbergen. And then third in the power rankings, I have Justin Allgaier, who hasn't necessarily had the strongest finishes to start the year, but he's had a lot of great speed and not necessarily the finishes that he deserved. I was really debating back and forth between himself and Sheldon Creed, and many of you know Sheldon Creed is my favorite driver in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, but I want to see a little bit more out of him. He did have a lot of speed in Coda, lost the power steering, and put on a phenomenal performance nonetheless, and of course, he has that win at Hot Atlanta. And then fifth in the power rankings, rounding out the power rankings in the O'Reilly Series, is Sammy Smith, Sammy Boy, with a 12.7 average finish. He's been just overall pretty consistent, just staying out of trouble for the most part, just trying to get some decent finishes to start the year. And then we'll move over to the Cup Series power rankings, and yeah, Reddick had to be number 1. He's won all 3 races to start the regular season, 3 wins to start the regular season, so obviously a 1.0 average finish, points leader by 70 points. He's number 1. There was a little bit of debate between myself for second between Bubba and Chase Elliott. I ended up giving the edge to Bubba Wallace, primarily because I think Bubba Wallace could have won either one of those first 2 races, when I don't think Chase Elliott would have. And also, Bubba Wallace put in a lot better of a performance in Circuit of the Americas than I expected, so he has to have a little bit of confidence heading into Phoenix Raceway. And then Elliott has just continued to do what he does, Mr. Consistent. A great start of the year for Chase Elliott. And then you have Ryan Blaney, 4th in the power rankings. I was debating between Blaney, Shane Van Gisbergen, and Joey Logano for these last 2 spots, but Ryan Blaney potentially had the car to beat in Circuit of the Americas. I think if he made that call to come down, Jonathan Hassler had made that call to come down pit lane and get 4 fresh tires, Blaney might have ended up taking that win from Tyler Reddick, but I guess we'll never know. And then Shane Van Gisbergen has started off this season fantastic. 12.7 average finish, of course, getting second at Circuit of the Americas, a a perfect start, I'd say, for the year, other than, of course, not winning at Circuit of the Americas, one more spot higher. And I think SVG has started off the season better than I think everybody really expected. So every single week, I'll go through my power rankings. So after Phoenix Raceway, there will be an update in the NASCAR Cup Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series power rankings. And then, of course, the Craftsman Truck Series is off for the next 2 weekends and will be back for Darlington. All right, let's get to the schedule and the facts for Phoenix Raceway weekend. All right, here is the weekend schedule for Phoenix Raceway. On Thursday at 6 p.m., we have the General Tire 150 on Fox Sports 1 for the ARCA Menard Series, and this will also be an ARCA Menard Series West race, as well as the ARCA Menard Series tend to do some of these combination races with the West and the East of the ARCA Menard Series, obviously formerly known as the K&N Series. And then we'll move over to Friday. We have the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series practice at 7 p.m. on the CW app, and then O'Reilly Auto Parts Series qualifying on the CW app at 8 p.m. We also have some IndyCar Series practice and qualifying throughout the day. And then we'll move over to Saturday, where at noon we have Cup Series practice on Prime Video. At 1 p.m., we have qualifying on Prime Video on Saturday. And then at 3 p.m., we have the Good Ranchers 250 on Fox for the IndyCar Series. I'm pumped about that. It'll be my first time ever going to an IndyCar Series race, so I'm very excited about that. And then at 7:30 p.m., we have the GovX 200 on the CW for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. I personally thought it was a very big missed opportunity. I think they should have put the IndyCar Series at night and then the O'Reilly Series during the day. I personally think they should have flip-flopped them, but it is what it is. And then on Sunday, we have the Straight Talk Wireless 500 at 3:30 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. And now that we've gone through that, let's go through the weekend facts and the Straight Talk Wireless 500 facts. The stages end at lap 60, 185, and it's a 312 lap event for the Cup Series. The track is located in Avondale, Arizona, right outside Phoenix. The length of the track is 1 mile. It is a speedway. The track opened up back in 1964, but didn't run a cup race until 1988 in November, as Alan Kowicki was your first winner at that racetrack. And then I think that's where he also debuted the Polish victory lap in that same race. The active win leader at the racetrack is Joey Logano. And then last year's winners were Christopher Bell in the spring, and then Ryan Blaney for championship weekend. And then the notable entries for the Truck Series, O'Reilly Series, and Cup. As I mentioned earlier, the Truck Series is off this weekend. And in the O'Reilly Series, we have Chandler Smith driving the number 5. We have Brent Cruz making another start for Joe Gibbs Racing, as he only has a couple more weeks until he turns 18. We have Raja Caruth driving the number 32, as we have William Byron driving the 88 this week. So Caruth is filling out his race, some of his races with Jordan Anderson Racing. And then we have Daniel Dye in the number 52. And then the Cup Series, we only have one notable entry, as RCR pulls out the number 33 for a second straight weekend, but this time with Austin Hill at the wheel. And then the weekend weather report, it looks like we're not going to get any rain. It's looking like 0% chance of rain throughout a good portion of the weekend. On Friday, it's 5%. And then the temperatures around race time on Saturday and Sunday should be anywhere between 80 and 85 degrees. And Sunday looks like it's going to be a little bit warmer than Saturday. And then Friday is going to be pretty cool, but no racing on Friday. All right, now that we've gone through the schedule and the facts, I do want to give some thoughts on Phoenix Raceway. I've personally been going to Phoenix Raceway for around 7 or 8 years now. I've been going there for a while. I camp there every year for the spring and the fall race, and it's a beautiful facility. You can tell they put so much money into the facility those years ago. It's one of the best looking facilities on the Cup Series circuit. I would agree, though, it doesn't necessarily produce the greatest racing. I think the things that Goodyear have been coming up with and the things that Goodyear have been doing has definitely helped with the racing. And I also think the slight increase in horsepower this year to 750 from 680 on the short tracks and road courses, and I think any track actually below a mile. I think that could really help Phoenix Raceway and with the racing. I think it could really help and produce some potential better racing at Phoenix Raceway. I am very interested to see how it all goes this weekend for the Cup Series, IndyCar Series, and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. And the thing I like most about Phoenix is probably the dog leg. I like all that open. It makes the restarts very entertaining and very exciting. At the same time, I do kind of miss the grass to a certain degree as well, because that brought a different element to it. You didn't just have people cutting all the way over there. But at the same time, those restarts get nutty. Like I will always remember the Truck Series Championship last year with Corey Heim just sending it all the way to the bottom and passing like 20 cars in half a lap. It was just insane. Phoenix produced some great restarts, and I think there's been some decent racing over the last year or two. I think the racing has gotten a little bit better at Phoenix Raceway for the Cup Series, at least. I think it usually puts on a pretty decent show for the O'Reilly Series or the Truck Series. I think the Cup Series has been the big issue for Phoenix Raceway, and I think we're seeing progress. I think Goodyear is doing a lot. And I'm very excited to see how the horsepower change ends up going. Some of you may have seen my left turns and right money videos where I'm previewing the weekend from a NASCAR bettor's perspective. Those videos are pretty hard to put together. They really haven't gotten any sort of response. So I've decided to now do all those bets and all those graphics on X. So check every week on Thursday for those graphics on X. But what I'll also add to Larry's Trackside teaser is the left turns and right money overview, where I'll go through all my bets from the previous NASCAR weekend and just give a quick overview on how much I lost, how much I won every single week. But like I said, follow Trackside Larry on X, and every Thursday I'll be going through my bets over there. All right, here's this week's left turns and right money winnings and losings post Coda and St. Pete. Had a really strong start of the year, a positive week in Daytona, a positive week at Echo Park Speedway, but this weekend was a really bad weekend from a betting perspective for me. Only hit one of my bets, and that was the Cup Series bet of Denny Hamlin getting a top 10, which didn't get me that much. We ended up being pretty hard into the negative this week as we lost 4 units in the Cup Series. We lost 5.7 units in the O'Reilly Series, 3.25 units on the Truck Series, and then the weekend parlay where I combined all my predictions for the weekend winners into one parlay. I lost 1 unit. So I almost lost 14 units for the Coda St. Pete weekend at 13.95 units. And then my overall total right now for the season is negative 6.8 units. So I'm almost 7 units, $7 into the hole. And then we'll look at the Cup Series and O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and Truck Series totals at the moment. In the Truck Series so far, we've only hit one bet out of all 3 weeks, so we're pretty negative over there with 11.55. In the O'Reilly Series, it so far has probably been our best, but that's primarily because of us hitting the Sheldon Creed bet last week, and that's at plus 4.3. And then the Cup Series honestly hasn't been all that great either. The only reason we're really in the positive is because we did hit on Kyle Busch getting the pole in the Daytona 500, and that's at plus 1.45 units. You could tell by the bonuses in O'Reilly and Cup that those are the 2 bets that ended up hitting, because those were bonus bets that I decided to take out of the 5 normal bets. So every week in Left Turns Right Money, I'll have a pure winner prediction. I will also have an underdog winner prediction, being my tinfoil hat club, and then I have my 3 favorite non-winning bets of the weekend. And this weekend, we only hit one bet. We only hit one bet for the whole weekend. That is no bueno. That is not good at all. 1 out of 18 bets this weekend is what we hit. So that will be your left turns and right money update. And yeah, check in on my X account every Thursday, and I'll be going through my bets for the Truck Series, O'Reilly Series, and Cup Series every week. So this week, it will obviously just be the O'Reilly Series and the Cup Series for Phoenix. All right, before I get to my weekend picks, I do quickly want to go through a couple of favorites and a couple of people to watch out for the Cup Series race, the Straight Talk Wireless 500, a couple of drivers you should keep an eye out for to potentially win. Obviously, Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell has been so good here the last number of years. I think the worst race he had is when he was in the Championship 4, and that wasn't even really his fault. He ended up losing a tire. Ryan Blaney, he's always someone to watch out for on any one of these mile or less tracks. Denny Hamlin, he's really good at Phoenix. He's really good at tracks like this. Joey Logano is the all-time win leader at Phoenix Raceway. But I think it's also hit and miss with Logano. Logano's either going to compete for the win or he's going to be running around 15th. So that's something to be a little weary of. Chase Elliott, I would say not necessarily an underdog, but I don't think a lot of people would expect him to have a good run. He's someone to watch out for. And then the last guy I'll throw in there is Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe got his first career win at Phoenix Raceway. It's one of his better racetracks. So Briscoe, especially being someone who's looking to turn it around, because Briscoe hasn't had the best start of the year. All right, now that we've gone through all that, let's go through my picks for the Cup Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series at Phoenix Raceway. So here are my two picks for Phoenix Raceway. We have Christopher Bell winning in the NASCAR Cup Series, and then Justin Allgaier, a.k.a. Lil Gator, winning in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. From people that really watch NASCAR, this is probably a pretty boring pick. And I'm not going to lie, it is. It is a boring pick. But these two drivers have been by far the best in their series at this racetrack over the last number of years. Justin Allgaier's best track, I'd say, is Phoenix. And he's taken over Phoenix many times over the last number of years, especially in the spring race. And then Christopher Bell, I would say Phoenix is probably his second best track. I would say New Hampshire is probably his best. But Phoenix is his second best track, and we've seen him already get 2 wins at the racetrack and only being in the Cup Series for not all that long at this point. And I would consider Phoenix Raceway not necessarily a difficult track, but a difficult track to win, because not a lot of drivers currently in the Cup Series have more than 1 win at the track. All right, those are my picks to win at Phoenix Raceway. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Who are your picks to win in the Cup Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series? And if you want, you could also throw in the IndyCar Series and the ARCA Menard Series this weekend at Phoenix. But that'll do it for this week's edition of Larry's Trackside Teaser. Whether you're on YouTube or on Spotify, I would appreciate a like, a follow, subscribe, comment, do whatever you got to do. And go enjoy Phoenix Raceway this weekend, whether you're at the racetrack like I am or if you're watching at home. Go enjoy Phoenix Raceway this weekend. And then next week, we will preview Las Vegas Motor Speedway. But for now, I'm Trackside Larry saying peace.